holding very still while observing what comes and goes in the mind stream and in the sense fields. Keep it very simple and just observe. If you can help it, make no comment at all. Just observe. Those of you in the Zendo, please come and sit in front of the altar. Those of you on Zoom, please turn toward your computer screen and thank you. Thank you very much for coming this evening, and also thank you for all of your help, both support with the Sangha and this community, both in your participation and study practice with us, and also with your financial help with us. Please continue to help us. This evening's Dharma talk is titled "The Teacher's Outflows," and I have a question mark there. So, does the teacher have outflows? Well, first of all, what are outflows? And different ways of talking about it, but this is when something is erupting either in consciousness based on passion, aggression, and ignorance, pushing something, pulling something, ignoring something, some kind of outflow. Generally, it's most common thing you could think of would be just an outburst or a getting angry at someone for what they've said or done. That kind of thing is understood that way. Of course, might show up a little bit differently for someone who is functioning as a true teacher. A true teacher may still have the same karma that he or she or they were born with, and still may be dealing with the dependent origination in the form of how their body's functioning, everything about them. That is still happening. They still have a particular skin color and whatever nationality, you could go on and on, sexual orientation for that matter. And on, all the relativity is still there. So the outflows may show up. And if you are caught up in your own belief in what is happening, disbelief in what is happening, or ignorance of what is happening, you may not even recognize a true teacher. And if it is a true teacher, what I mean by true teacher, my definition of that is someone who is teaching out of what they're looking at, not of necessarily what they've been taught, although that may have helped them a great deal to even get to so that they can actually see what this is. But this doesn't necessarily mean that they are free of their karma, or free of the causes and conditions that show up in their mind stream. So, interesting differentiation or understanding there. And the fundamental understanding is there as the duality is seen through there's no self and there's no other. There's no one here who believes that this voice is them. There's no one here who believes that the voice coming from another direction is someone else. Nor are they the same. That's why you can't get a reference point out. If you're using any kind of a pitching post or rest for your elbow in terms of your consciousness to lean on this or lean on that, including the Dharma. You cannot lean on anything. If you have a teacher, then receive what comes from the teacher towards you, especially personally, but generally also receive it no matter how much it looks like an outflow, because it probably is one. It's just not generated out of passion, aggression, and ignorance. Different kind of outflow. I'm not validating and justifying or saying that a teacher is justified in abusing someone or hurting someone or using someone or cheating someone or any of that just because they're a teacher. So we are limited by the conceptual situation that we're in, called language and ideas and concepts and analysis and logic and so on. But we are not imprisoned by it if we do not necessarily believe, disbelieve, or shut down on anything. Right back to the three poisons of passion, aggression, and ignorance, which ego mind, that part of the consciousness is curled up into a me, will use to protect that imaginary self-centeredness called the imaginary nature in the teachings of the three modes, or Tantra, Kalpana, Nishpana, or the dependently arisen, the imaginary nature, and the perfected nature. So the teacher, just like everyone else, is going to have outflows, or going to have something happens and there's going to be a reaction to it. But the nature of that reaction probably will be quite a bit different than the reaction that is based on pushing, pulling, the desire to control or have something different than it is. It's not easy to discuss or even talk about conceptually, as if there's another way to talk about things other than conceptually, possibly poetry. I can go further, but I can also respond to some questions around that.
Jude, bowing. What does it mean to receive the teacher's outflow? Bowing.
Don't add to it. Receive it, no matter what it is. Just listen, just hear, just see, just receive it. If you make any comment on it or add to it in any way whatsoever, well, the teacher must mean this, the teacher must mean that, or the teacher isn't really clear, or the teacher has more clarity than I have. Anything, any kind of comment on it stops you from receiving what it actually is. More if you have it.
Jude, is interacting with the teacher around that outflow adding on to it? Bowing.
It doesn't matter if it's adding on. It's what you're aware of. Keep going, don't stop. Yes.
Wunderbar, you said the teacher lives out of their karma, but it's not passion, aggression, or prejudice?
I'm not saying that might not arise, but there's no perpetuation, there's no shutting down of the passion. There's just passion. There's no shutting down of the anger. There's just no hatred. But the anger can come out of your life. That's why it's so difficult to see this. It's because we can immediately find why we're angry, find the trigger to it. And we might want to stop that, or we might want to live up to a standard of never being angry. That's a misunderstanding. Go ahead.
Wunderbar, are we receiving the outflow, whether it comes from karma or there are outflows that don't come from karma?
Well, everything is coming, anything that occurs is dependently risen. But that which occurs from the activity or the words of the teacher is coming out of dependent origination, but there's no self there. So it's still coming out of pratitya samutpada, but there's no individual there. There's no center there. If someone's doing that, that is happening, but there's no consciousness singularity behind it called me or the teacher who knows, who sees all, knows all, and it's just trying to help you. It's better than that, it's worse than that. You want it? Better than that because you're liberated. And if you have a teacher who is liberated, then you can participate in that liberation. And when I say participate, I'm saying receive it. It is being offered to you and given to you. Complete generosity without expecting anything in return at all. No one's expecting anything.
So when you say that you're living out of the karma, it's the same thing as basically participating in dependent origination?
Yes, you're no longer at war with anything. You're no longer at peace with anything, and you're no longer ignoring anything. So then you are from the relative point of view, might look pretty crazy. But from the point of view of consciousness only, nothing is happening. Because it is an illusion. This has been taught way before this old man got here, or any of us got here. This is unreal. Yes,
Oh, Divine, so what you are participating in the illusion and at the same time seeing that nothing is happening?
yes, you see that nothing happens. At the same time, the illusion is there. You hear the sounds, you smell, you see, you feel. All of that still, you no longer are objecting to anything, agreeing with anything, or looking away from anything, or ignoring anything, or distracting yourself from anything. And the teaching person is in that same soap opera. It's just that they know that it's not real, and you, as a student, do not yet. But you have a suspicion that something's going on that you don't quite understand. You meet the teacher and you find someone who and it could kind of show up differently for each person. For some people, it shows up like, not a teacher, they're gone. There's someone else, something about that particular person that you can't look away. I know, I met a couple of them. You can't look away. Then there are people who teach, you don't need a teacher. Jiddu Krishnamurti back in the 1950s was saying, and here he was teaching every day to groups of people saying, you don't need a teacher, you don't need a teacher. And he said a lot of other things that were quite interesting. He's really a profound thinker and so on. So there are several other teachers, contemporary ones that are saying the same thing. And what are they doing in teaching? They write books and tell you you don't need a teacher. Just recently had someone send me a quote from one of these people saying, you don't need a teacher. And then that person asked me if I agreed to that. I said, yeah, you know. But I like the way Trunk Rinpoche said it. I thought that was more situational. He said, you need the teacher so you can leave the teacher. So you don't need a teacher, but first you have to have a teacher to see what that is. So the teacher can introduce you to what this is, which is not separate and which is unreal. You have to meet someone who is looking at that. If you don't, then the chances of you seeing this for yourself are rare, and I don't say they're impossible. It's the karma that brought you into this world and provided you with the shape of your nose, the color of your skin, and the way your thinking process works and everything else goes way, way back. So there may be some kind of karma in there where there's a possibility you can awaken without any teacher, like Byron Katie, the one who teaches her style is ask 4 questions and turn it around. He uses your own logic against itself because she sees that logic doesn't make any sense unless you put it against itself. And then you can begin to have a deeper understanding of consciousness only, her way of teaching it. But even now I understand she's teaching people to meditate because they are recommending that they also meditate. That's what I've heard. I haven't talked to her. So you could say it that way. The way Trungpa Rinpoche said it is, you need a teacher so you can lead the teacher. Yes.
When you're buying, what does it mean to leave the teacher? Bowing.
You see, you're not separate from the teacher. You see, there isn't anything else with this. But until you see that, then you'll think something should be happening, other things shouldn't be happening, or I should be thinking this, I shouldn't be thinking that, or I shouldn't be acting that way, or I shouldn't be angry, or I have a right to be angry. I shouldn't be angry. Very similar, taking a position on anything. And it's difficult because if the next door neighbor is upsetting you about something you're doing and you're really angry, you very likely could feel I shouldn't feel, I should just be more understanding, or I don't know why I get mad at the slightest thing. Or you could go the other way around. I'm totally justified. I'm going to go over there and give them a piece of my mind, all that. I'm calling the police. But anytime you take any position on anything is very nature of confusion and warfare and passion, aggression, and ignorance.
Students unbowing, is endeavoring to align ourselves with what the teacher's saying, not receiving it?
Again, please.
Is endeavoring to align ourselves with what the teacher's saying, not receiving it?
Well, I think sometimes that's part of it. I certainly did a lot of that. So I'm just saying your style, someone else's style, are going to show up different ways. Another way of receiving the teaching is to not know what the hell's even being pointed at. That's receiving the teaching. Another way of receiving the teaching is doing what yours. So teacher saying this, I'll try to align myself with that. You may have to do a whole lot of aligning or endeavoring to align. It could be your style or someone else's style. There's no right or wrong way to do this. The only way you can do it wrong is just to not do it at all and continue to spin in some samsara lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Is that actually happening? No, that's an illusion too. Nothing happens. But if we think it does, we're going to come back over and over and over, just like being trapped in a nightmare or dream. It seems real.
Students unbowing, is falling at the feet of the teacher just receiving?
That's just a way of talking about it. Receive from the teacher. Yes. Very important. This is not something just I'm saying. It's traditional teaching down through the centuries. It's expressed in different ways by different teachers, different lineages, different ways of presenting what the Buddha taught, and other teaching situations that come out of different places like ancient India, the Upanishads, involve that kind of relationship to the teacher or the guru.
Soker and bowing. Does the practice of receiving outflows from the teacher differ from the practice of receiving outflows from the Sangha?
You need to have something to practice on. And it's good to practice, if you're going to practice that, practice it with a teacher rather than with the Sangha. But at the same time you do it with the teacher, then you can actually do it with the Sangha. The teacher is also part of the Sangha. More about it, this is a very specific area you can ask about there if you have more.
Soker and bowing. When I am in Dokuzan, I could sit there for 4 hours and you would not tell me to leave the room. How long? Do we limit our time with you? Receiving outflows,
I think people
receiving
do.
teachings?
People limit their time or they don't. Or they have an idea how long they need to spend, and some people are very definite about how much they want to sit there or interact or ask questions. And other people are very, what do you call it, efficient. They come in, they know what they want to ask about, they ask and they leave. So it's different for everyone. There's no protocol, and I don't limit. I do some to some extent, because otherwise it would just go on and on and on. But it depends on who it is. Some people I limit interviews, some people I don't.
Soker and bowing, are your outflows circular? Are your outflows circular?
Yes. Yeah, you do this and do that, and I come back and say, stop it. And then you do it again, and I come back again and say, stop it. If I'm your teacher, then I can say that to you. But I won't say something like that if I feel like you're kind of pretending to be my student. What I ran into with my Zen master, Gobanchina Roshi. I was trying to pretend to be a student, and he could see that I was bullshitting him. And he didn't buy it, and he just basically ignored me. And I still didn't know what that was, because I could not see how full of myself and how full of pride I was. I really didn't want to fall at the feet of the teacher. And I was never able to with him. He died before I could do that. Before I could tell him I understood what he was pointing at. But it still helped me. It just took many, many years. Many. More?
Soker and bowing, the other part of another teaching you give is don't do anything unless you have to. I'm stuck between just receiving outflows and receiving outflows until I'm drowning in either your dharma or sanga's circularity.
Well, take a break, do something else. Especially in a position where you're the shuso, you're not obligated to sit and listen to anybody. You don't have to come and see me either. That's up to you. Anyone in here knows that whatever their relationship is with me, it's they determine that. And I may determine some of it, but quite a bit of it is just, I'm just looking at you and trying to understand who you are, what you're dealing with, and if I really have permission from you to teach you, or if you're just gonna argue with me or disagree with me. You may not say that. You might not come out in the open, like argue with me, but I know what's going on. I don't have to read your mind. I don't read minds. Plenty of room for questions there. What the hell am I doing? Nothing. Doing anything.
Choose unbowing. Can a student give you permission to teach and argue with your teaching?
Always. Always, yes. When I say always, I'm saying depends on who it is. It's different for everyone. So there's no standard that people are living up to. The teacher's receiving, and if the outflows come out, sometimes they're going to come out like hammer blows. Depends on who you are and what you're dealing with, and if you've given that teacher permission or not. And that teacher will know how much permission you have given them. So you will get you're going to get just exactly what you need. It's kind of amazing. The teacher's not thinking about it, not thinking, let's see now, Sokuzan needs to be treated this way or that way. I make no decisions. Anybody that's really close to me, like Unyo, sees that she watches me all day long, every day. She says, I don't make any decisions. I just do this, or I don't do this, or I do that. You see me sitting around thinking about things, weighing things.
Only retreat huts.
What do you mean, retreat hut?
What happened to the handle that was supposedly ordered?
Those sons of bitches. Oh, you mean Lowe's? Yeah. Well, that's just an expletive. If you haven't heard that before, you haven't heard it. One time I yelled at someone at Toyota for mistreating a former student of mine. Goes on and called the guy a bunch of names. And one of the salespeople says, aren't you a Buddhist monk? And I said, yes. I noticed you swearing and you're just really having a fit. I says, yeah, I'm not a very good monk. That was the end of it. And when I say that, I'm saying you don't have to be somebody else. You get to be who you are. You don't have to live up to anybody's standard of enlightenment or anything. If you were to listen to me or judge me by what's going on, you probably couldn't be a student of mine. You might need somebody who's holy and pure, or who looks that way.
When you're bowing. So what is the difference of someone who picks up their AR-15 and just mows other people down? Is that being genuine?
No, it's more than likely it's somebody who is so tied into the landslide of karma that they just couldn't do it any other way. They were part of that. They're not a separate being making decisions. Next thing you know, just like my father, who at 26 years old was killed in World War II in Germany, probably after he killed a lot of Germans. He didn't even want to go, but that was not an option in 1944. You had to go. The mandatory draft. More about it if you have.
When you're bowing, so it seems like there could be I don't know, our political scene is pretty loaded these days. And it seems there's what I would call an attitude of entitlement.
Yes, what's your question?
Do bodhisattvas, are they entitled to anything?
No. So all dharmas, when I say dharma, there's the dharma of a clock, there's the dharma of food, there's the dharma of hitchhiking, there's the dharma of the Buddha, which covers quite a bit, and there's the dharma of motorcycles. You read that book by Robert Pirsig? Not a good book. I don't recommend it. Read my book instead. The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's a pretty good book. You could read it. But all dharmas are without blame. But that doesn't mean that this didn't fall through the air with the sound. This didn't cause that. But the deep understanding of it, that there is no separate thing. There's just this incredible orchestration of this and that and this and that and this and that ad infinitum that looks like apparent things are happening in the illusion we call time. But everything happens at once. It would be a way of saying it. And even that's a little bit too relative an emphasis on once. This is just this. The past and the future are illusions. But we can pad them up with our conceptual mind, say, well, what happened yesterday is not happening today. And what's going to happen tomorrow is not happening yet. Well, okay, go ahead and do that and see how happy you are. Go ahead and do that. But don't do anything unless you have to. Don't add, subtract, divide. Just receive. If you can receive this, then you eventually, I don't know how gradual it would be, but you eventually understand what this is deeply. And you're not separate from it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to understand how what you just said, don't do anything unless you have to, plays into impulse. It seems like, is there a relationship there?
Well, when you see something, just receive it. When you perceive something, just receive it. Don't do anything with it. So the tendency is to perceive something and then think something about it, or analyze it, or judge it, or blame it, or them, or situations to actually create some kind of a rotation called samsara. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, it shouldn't be there, it should be there. They shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said this. On and on. To just perceive something directly, a direct perception of what this is. You won't see anything. I'm saying you'll see something, but you'll see that what you're seeing is unreal. It's an illusion. So you might as well say you're not seeing anything. Or you could say you're seeing the illusion. But if you say that, then also that which is seeing the illusion is also an illusion. Both the subject and the object are unreal. It's an incredible display. You don't have to fix anything or do anything. You can just observe it, just look at it. And then any kind of activity that you take in your everyday life will come out of your awareness rather than the deep, dark areas of passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear. The karma that you pushed away that showed up centuries ago that you still trying to show up, that you're keeping at bay because you have no way of working with it. And this dharma, this way of working with consciousness will help you to receive what shows up so that you don't have to go to war with anything, even your own death. You're not in disagreement with anything. You're not in agreement with anything. And this is what some people say when they say you don't need a teacher. You don't, because when you see what this is, there is no one left. There's no other anymore. Everything. This is a traditional teaching, not something that I invented. Everything, if you see what this is, everything is empty of other. There's no, everything you look at is not something else. It's not some other thing, some other person. But until that time, you're going to have friends and enemies and neutrals. You'll fight with some, agree with others, fall in love with others, on and on and on. And it's been lifetime after lifetime. Am I condemning you to something? Of course not. Don't believe a word I say. Do whatever you want to do. Live your life. And good luck. Further questions?
Kabang question from Martin in Latvia on
Martine, what are you doing on that? You should come here.
Are teachers' outflows always meaningful?
Well, if you have a teacher and this teacher is your teacher. And you have confidence, you could say, or if you are endeavoring to be a student. In other words, a student receives. And that way of, learning to be work in a metal shop or learn how to build cabinets, that kind of learning has a very strong relative success and failure and gradual tone to it. So, and that kind of a teacher is a certain kind of teacher. The Dharma teacher, the one who teaches about the nature of what this is, or consciousness, there's no graduation. It starts out that way. Even the 10 bhumis, which you talked about and are related to the paramitas and have a meaning to them. But if you look at them closely, you can't find a connection between one and the other unless you invent it conceptually. And can you do that? Of course. And there's all kinds of scholars that'll explain that to you. I'm not saying it's a waste of time. I'm not saying it's a waste of time. But you might want to just look at what's right in front of you. Look at the wall, look at the floor, look at the back of your hand. Look at who you are. Do that. All those, if you need to study all the different sutras, they're there. We chant them all the time. They're reminders of what this is in conceptual terms. You may need to practice tantric Buddhism, creation completion practices, or Yidam practices, deity yoga. I practiced a lot of that, not as much as there is, because there are literally hundreds of sadhanas. We just spent several days practicing the sadhana Mahamudra together as a monastic community here. Yes.
Yoka bowing. Question from Ath in the UK. Sometimes would like to binge on watching your previous talks in one session for long hours. Is that a subtle distraction to
Yes.
not face the wall?
Yeah. Don't binge on my talks. Binge here. Binging on Sokuzan's talks. A psychiatrist, or at least a therapist. So I'm not sure what you're asking me, but if it's helpful to listen to them, of course. But the most important thing you can do is once you hear what's being pointed at from this area here, I don't care if you've heard one talk or this talk or whatever, the most important I can think of that you can do is to hold still so you can watch the way the mind moves and shuffles off the buffalo and continues to find something or reduce something or get something or go somewhere, do constant soap opera in the mind. Isn't it tiring? Let's see. Gee willikers. It's a valid expression. But you could actually, to talk to Ath, you could just hold still. You could listen to talks or study the Dharma in whatever way it's supportive to you, but spend a lot of time, sit down, hold still, watch the movement of the mind come and go. And this way, sharpen the awareness so that when you enter into your everyday situation, you've heard me say this countless times, that there is a less and less as you go along. You may not feel awakened, you may not feel like any smarter or any more clear, but there'll be less and less likelihood that you're going to interact with the world, other people, other apparent people, in out of passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear. The ego mind will be probably more confused. That's why you need a teacher. Because a teacher doesn't care if you're confused or not confused, because a teacher, if it's a true teacher, they don't see any difference between confusion and awakening, because they realize that nothing is separate from anything else. There's no separate thing anywhere. And to realize that, you don't care whether you have outflows or not. I would say it this way: if you're a student of this teacher, and you get too close, you're going to get burnt. There's no other way around it. In other words, you're going to get the outflow of that teacher that is coming out of their karma connected with your karma as a teacher and a student, regardless of what Krishnamurti or any other teacher says that you don't need a teacher. I would still go back to what Trungpa Rinpoche says. You might have to have the teacher so you can realize there never was such a thing. Start.
Shadow bowing, with that idea of too close, it sounds like we're closer to you than where we should be. Like, is there something to that?
I don't know what you mean.
Shadow bowing, if we're too close to the teacher, do we need to be farther away from the teacher?
No. You like water? Yes,
Junshi bowing. In the past, you've encouraged us to look at maybe societal norms in conversation, how we reify each other and just agree with each other back and forth. And if we're just receiving what someone says, it can be uncomfortable for them if we don't agree with them.
notice that. They'll even say, well, do you agree? And you can say any number of things. You could say, that's interesting what you're saying, but I don't know. I haven't thought about it that much. You can let yourself off the hook. I gotta go get my laundry done. That works too. I mean, you can actually, there's nothing wrong with distracting the situation, just disconnecting from someone who is trying to promote some kind of going in and tying everything in knots and getting to, you join in and they're not tying with their ideas, their opinions, their convictions, their intelligence, and their Rice Krispies. Cereal City.
Junshi bowing. I don't feel confident in knowing when to engage,
To what?
knowing when to engage.
Different kind of confidence here. It's the confidence that you don't need to know when to engage. That's confidence. You'll just hear yourself engaging or not engaging. You won't have second thoughts around anything. You won't even have third thoughts. You may not have thoughts at all. You may just hear yourself speaking to someone and you may hear them listening. But if you really are receiving something, you will not know what they're saying. I don't know how to say it more clearly than that. You do not know what they're saying. I mean, you know the words, you hear the words, but the import is not always that clear, especially if it's coming from someone who is operating out of passion, aggression, and ignorance, because they don't even know that all that production is about securing an ego. It's not going to make any sense, except to them, because they don't know that they're reinforcing their ego, reinforcing their self-centeredness. But you begin to see it, especially if you're the way you're saying there, just receive it, listen. You don't have to understand it so that it's satisfactory to them, so that they feel like, well, at least you're hearing what I'm saying. Don't need to do that. Big relief.
What if they come back and are angry with me?
Well, you've heard of the four karmas: pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying. It's just a way of working with any kind of energy, but basically energy that's spinning or challenging. Pacify it if you can. If they're angry, just, you know, give me an example. Let's role play. You go ahead and give me an example of something that Sokuzan said to you, made you mad.
Nothing.
That would make me mad too. She didn't say anything to you. How dare her ignore you after all you've done for her? So, right? Right. So, okay, I won't put you on the spot in that way, but I'll say you could pacify it. Say, you could come back and say, and buy into what they're saying or doing a little bit. You could say, see, I can see you're having a hard time with that, but I really don't know what to say. Because I don't necessarily feel the way you feel. It makes kind of sense what you're saying, but don't agree, don't disagree, but interact with the person. So this way that pacifies, because then the person, their thinking process is tied up with yours and you aren't running away, you haven't left the room. You're pacifying, and that's going to show up If you understand what that word means, then it'll be situational. There won't be any standard you can live up to. If you really care about the person and you care about kindness, realizing that someone is trying to get rid of their chaos by dumping it on you. This doesn't mean they're deliberately trying to do that. They might actually be blaming you for how they're feeling, and they're after you about it. And if you can see that they're suffering and that's what they're doing, then you might be in a little bit better position to pacify it. The other three are enrich, magnetize, and destroy. So enriching is just adding the same chemistry that's coming at you back. Not doesn't mean fighting, but it just means staying with that same chemistry. And then it tends to disarm that. If you're not disagreeing with someone, but you're also not agreeing, but you're just present in that situation, then sometimes that tends to cause the heat of the moment to dissipate. The other two are more difficult than that, especially destroying. So much as you can, just receive, listen, be agreeable. Is that hard? It's hard to be agreeable. You know, hard to be agreeable. He's just gonna laugh. Another, yes.
Wunderbar. When you say receiving the outflows of the teacher, are we receiving content or are we receiving our reaction to the outflow?
It would be all of that. You'd receive what's coming, and then you receive any reaction you would have to the teacher. And so as you can, don't blame. Don't, if you're going to blame the teacher, then I mean, you might as well just leave. Follow me?
Wunderbar, what do you mean by if you begin to blame the teacher?
Well, if you're blaming the teacher for how you feel, then what are you even doing? I'm not saying that's going to last. That may be just an eruption that you see that you've just been, the teacher is trying to point out something to you and then you get pissed off. You follow me? So receive that. If it's a true teacher, they have nothing but no interest in anything other than you awakening your true nature. If they have any other motivation, getting your money, getting control, getting you to follow orders, getting anything to happen like that, then it's just somebody who wants control of other people.
Wunderbar, so in that example, how much of it is about our own reaction to it? Because you're also saying when we're listening to people that it doesn't matter what they're saying. It's a matter of the action of listening.
It's just receive. It's difficult. It's a life of suffering. It's a difficult situation we're in as human beings. But we could start somewhere. We could begin to start receiving what's showing, especially in a community like this, which is a Sangha. Start the little slogan or whatever you want to call it that I kind of invented is CCC: communicate, cooperate, collaborate. If you don't communicate, you're not going to be able to communicate or cooperate or collaborate. And if you don't listen to what people are saying without adding on your interpretation, your ideas, your judgments, your opinions, your blame, in other words, if you're not really listening, if as soon as somebody says something, you start to think things about what they're saying or doing, even if it's relatively correct. Because if it's relatively correct, then why have a spiritual path? If we're just going to go with relative truth, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth. We have a whole legal system that'll do that for us. And is that legal system fair? Take a look. We have thousands and thousands of people who are incarcerated based on laws that are about control, not about deep understanding of the difficulty of just being a human being. About control. Most of the world is run on that. And you could justify it and say, well, we have to, otherwise the Russians would invade or the people would come across the border, all the other justifications that are based on a belief in relative truth. I'm not saying disbelieve in relative truth, but don't let relative truth run your life, or then you, as however you live here, that's That's what's going to continue to show up. As it says in the Tibetan tradition, you want to know what your past life was, look at your body. That's telling you where you came from. You want to know what your next lifetime is, look at what's happening in the mind. How chaotic is that? Can't get rid of that chaos by fighting it, medicating it, let alone meditating it. You have to do it by being aware of it. And then it may hold together for a while and it may come apart. It is also part of the landslide of dependent origination. You can't separate yourself from anything. Yes.
Soker and bowing, you said when you're receiving, you may not know what you're receiving, that the other is suffering. How does suffering show up in your body,
In mine or in yours?
in yours?
Depends on the person. Sometimes intensely, sometimes very little. Just receive it. Whatever it is, you can receive it. That's all the teacher is doing, really. If it's a true teacher, they just receive, they should receive. And then if there's an outflow, it's not always this way because sometimes that outflow is coming from the complete difficulty of actually figuring out what causes and conditions are because it is so incredibly elaborate, even though it's an illusion. There's lots of parts and pieces. You can't track it down, you can't figure it out because the very act of figuring it out implies a belief in what? Past and future. And there isn't any such thing. It's worse than that and it's better than that. It's worse than that because it's a mess. And it's better than that because it's unreal and you can see it. And you no longer believe in this, disbelieve in this, nor do you ignore it. So the teaching person may teach in such a way that looks rude or impolite or even possibly abusive. But I'm not saying we need to let somebody off the hook who's being abusive. Take them to court, do whatever you want with them. But the whole idea of right and wrong is and correct and incorrect is a misunderstanding. It needs to be seen. You see it, you just know it. It's a kind of knowledge that is not about knowing something is here or over here. It's not that kind of knowledge. It's a knowledge that is just consciousness. So there's no one who knows it. And there's nothing that is known. I don't mean to be obscure. But when you're using relative words to endeavor to point to something that is beyond any kind of relative understanding, then it may seem obscure. Unless you are aware of it. If you are, there won't be anything, but there won't be anything else with that. There's just that. There isn't any other to it. It's empty of other. Sir.
To use Bowing, what does it mean to not know what you're saying when relatively it's very definite? Bowing.
Does it sound like I'm very definite?
Sometimes.
How about right now?
I don't know.
Exactly. My point exactly. So I don't know. I don't have a reference point for anything. The only reference points I have are situations. Situation shows up. I work with it where it's at, but there's no person who's doing that. There's no second thought or idea or second guessing. I don't care what happens next. It's not that I don't care what happens, but there's no next. There's only this. See that, realize that. Yes, sir.
Milka Bowing, question from Adriana. Adriana Bowing, how can there be no past and no future? Bowing.
So there's just this. The past is not here. It's gone, and the future is not showed up. So those, and they never do. Because it's always now. Which is not particularly helpful because then we have to think about now all the much. What is that? Another N word. Even to say now is extra. Nothing ever happens next. If you think that it does, then it just means that there's someone there who thinks that some things happen and other things don't happen. Adriana. Several people have left already, so it must be getting late. Is there a final question out in the Zoom land? Kayun, don't you want to know stuff?
Kayun bowing. Yeah, I want to know stuff.
Known better than that. I don't know.
I was reading some translation of the Four Reminders recently,
Yes.
and it described karma or our actions as our only possessions. And it was a striking image, and I wondered what you made of that.
I don't make anything of it. Got a question other than that one?
Yeah. How is so if the state of our minds is what we'll be reborn as, is that an indictment? Bowing.
I think it's just meant to help you see that if your mind is just grasping and rejecting and shutting down, and grasping, rejecting and shutting down, then that same thing is happening in consciousness. When the body mind drops, that consciousness is still looking for something else, something else, something else. It doesn't, I don't think it's an indictment, and there's no guarantee that if you're, having fantasies of murdering people, that somehow you're going to be reborn a murderer. There's all the causes and conditions that show up there are so complicated. It could be, we've all been around for just countless lifetimes as apparent individuals showing up, and that consciousness that shows up here with you is combined, as been said way before I got here. There's not just you having lifetime after lifetime, but consciousnesses showing up in different lifetimes, overlapping each other, underlapping. So there's no solid separate identity anymore. There's just consciousness, and the separations come up out of the passion, aggression, and passion, aggression, and ignorance of the three poisons, and out of the vow to be with all things. This is the vow that transcends karma. You can begin to do that now. Whatever happens, don't agree. Whatever happens, don't disagree. Whatever happens, don't ignore it. Be with all things. And do that not only in the form of things that happen in your mind, which are just like living beings, but do it in the form of the people that show up in front of you. This doesn't mean that you agree with someone because they're robbing people or cheating people. You just have to be very aware of that situation. And you would also see, if you're very aware and you're not covering up what you're seeing with judgment or with calling the cops for that matter, but you may see that a deep level of disturbance or suffering that person is endeavoring to cover up by their activity. This is the path of the enlightening being, or the bodhisattva, or the path of the Mahayana.
Senchu vowing, how does the vow transcend karma?
Because it doesn't have a goal other than be with all things. And you're not sitting around evaluating whether you're being with all things or not. Save all beings. There are no beings. Everything is empty of what you think it is. But if the vow is to do that, then that's how you eventually see it. You actually transcend the cause and effect. If you're trapped by cause and effect, that's because you believe in right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, success and failure, life and death is the big one. Awakening and delusion. But if you've received the vow twice as a lay practitioner and as a monk to be with all things. You've repeated it right here. I've heard you do it. I vow to be with all things. How's it going? Say it.
That vow inspires me.
Okay, well, that's. What more can I say than that? That's all it does here. There's no goal, there's just a vow. Transcends everything. Transcends the war. It doesn't solve anything, but it doesn't need to, because what the world is trying to get you to do is to work on fixing shit. And nothing is broken. It just looks like it is. The illusion looks like a bunch of broken stuff. If you want to live in that area, there's all kinds of opportunity. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Maybe you should. But you could also practice the Buddha's Dharma, which is see the truth yourself. You might need a little shove from a teacher, you might not, I don't know. That would be up to you. I'm not here to sell you anything. Is there a final question? Chisho, don't you have a question? This kind of looks like a questioning mudra. No?
Sure, just receive it.
Just receiving, okay. Me too. Anyone? Going. Very good, thank you so much.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi fu, shi son bu sa moko sa, moko ho ja ho ro mi. The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita,